Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of our fireside chat. Glad you've joined us today. And we're into July and we're in the middle of summer. And it won't be long before fall will come and we'll be wishing we were back here. So enjoy each day. That's my point. Learn to enjoy each day. We've been talking about how to stay focused and how to overcome through all the disruption and all the shaking and all the issues that are coming up in our lives and around us through this COVID-19 pandemic and all the other things that are going on in our lives, in our families, in our community, and even in the world today. And how, for most of us, in fact, really all of us, it's really unprecedented. And I want to talk to you about perseverance, about keeping our focus on why we're here, what our purpose is, that God has put us here, and therefore will enable us and He will equip us to do what we need to do, but we have to keep our eyes on Him and we have to rest in Him. There's a term that's used in a war, and we're in a war. We're in a spiritual battle right now. And I've mentioned before that the Bible talks about a spiritual warfare unfolding. And there's always a spiritual warfare, but I believe we're in a change of spiritual season. And we're seeing things come together that have been talked about in the Bible, that Jesus talked about, and we're beginning to see them happen. And so we are in a war. And in a real natural war, there's a phenomenon that can happen. It's called the fog, F-O-G, fog of war. We live in an area in Rhode Island. It's not far from the water. We don't live on the water, but we're not far from the water. So often, especially this time of year, we get up, it's very overcast. And I've had to realize the overcast may not be a cloud cover. It may be fog that's kind of moved in. And if you've ever tried to drive in a heavy fog or walk somewhere in a heavy fog, you can become very disoriented as to where you are, and because we lose our bearings. Well, this term is used in war, a fog of war. And what that means is you get into the war for so long and that your bearings get disrupted. And in a fog of war, what can happen is you can actually not realize who you're shooting at. And in the fog of war, many times what happens is people shoot at their own people, at their own soldiers. And there have been a lot of cases where there's a real disaster because somebody makes a mistake and they don't recognize who they're shooting at because they become disoriented. And as I've listened to people, and even in my own life, experience some of this myself. There's a weariness that happens in dealing with this. I think when all this started, and I've talked about this before, there's a hope that, well, this is going to end in a month or so. And now we may getting to realize this may not end quite as quickly as some have said, or we hoped it was. And now we're settling into this and having to redefine what's normal. And that's the term that's often used, the new normal. Well, that's disorienting to us. That's disorienting to the things that are made our lives have a clear focus, a clear direction. What is the normal part of our life, and now those are all stirred up and all changing, and there's a weariness that can come with that. And I've heard from people that they're getting frustrated, and when we do that, our emotions begin to get raw. And so we can begin to do in our families, we can begin to do with our friends, we can begin to do with those people that we work with. We can become very irritable with them. We can find ourselves, why am I short-tempered? And we start shooting at them, maybe not with a gun, but with our mouth. And we begin to see them as our enemy. And that's kind of the same thing that happens in a fog of war, in a physical war. We forget who the real enemy is, and we start shooting at the wrong enemy, and we start forgetting why we're here. So I want to encourage you, if you're going through something like that, it's very normal when you're in these kind of challenging times to feel disoriented. It's very normal to feel confused or feel frustrated or feel maybe more irritable, but we don't have to stay in that. So that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It just means that this is part of the process of going through this. So we have to come back, again, as I've talked about over and over again. When I get these emotions, when I find myself irritable, when I find myself offended at somebody, I find myself going through those kinds of emotions, that's a warning to me of what's wrong. Where am I looking at? What am I trusting in? And it forces me to go back to trusting in my relationship with Christ, my relationship with Him. If we're abiding in Him, then none of these things will shake us. And I've been talking to you over and over again about building into our lives those things that will keep us strong and keep us focused and keep us steady. And ultimately, what it comes down to is Jesus said, He said, I'm the vine and you are the branches. Abide in me. And then he talks about our prayer life. Abiding in him means we're resting in the union with him, our relationship with him. And in that union, he is our strength. I talked, I think, yesterday about Ephesians 6:10. Be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. So when I get flustered, when I find this fog of war, when I find myself irritable, that's a sign to me I've stopped looking at him and I've stopped resting at him. And the more I learn to come back to resting in him, the more I learn to, Jesus said, come unto me, all ye that are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Come unto me. He didn't say learn this. He said, and go out and do this. He said, come to me, your personal relationship with him, and just rest in him. He's got you all covered. He goes before you to make a way. He goes behind you as a rear guard. He is in you to protect you, and he is your source of everything. And when we get anxious, it's because we've stopped looking at him and we're looking at ourselves. And this is an ongoing process. But the more we learn to do that, the more disciplined we become, the more we renew our mind, as I talked about yesterday. And the more the reality of who we are in Christ takes on a reality in our life. And then these things don't begin to bother us so much. And this is so critical because in order to do what he's put us here to do, we have to learn to be unshakable because we're part of a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Well, that's all for today. Come back and maybe pick up on some of this tomorrow. Remember this is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and we will see you tomorrow.